Okay, here's the situation. Welcome back. LaWaun Curry here, and
Tara Curry.
I like what she says there. So we are going to be touching on a different topic today, and how can we put this? We want to talk about marriage and individual expectations. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where can I start? Well, let me start from manhood. Because and guys, just to make sure you understand where I'm coming from when I say as a man and manhood, I do fathers programs in my parent education, and so one of my specialties are working with men, and so I do want to state that when we talk about expectations, it was my expectation that I would meet all my wife's needs in this marriage, and that is definitely not the case. In the last blog, we talked about spices, for example, and I realized that the intellectual needs of my wife, I cannot meet. No, I'm a part of, but I can't, meet those expectations for her. She's very intellectual, and she has a lot of circles in a lot of areas where she gets her intellectual needs met. And for me, I have to know that as a man, it shouldn't affect my self-esteem. I should be very proud of that and honored that my wife is getting her own needs met in this way. And I even want to say this in terms of financially. All right, we're moving away from the spices and really talking about life and situations that happen in marriage and what our expectations are financially. I thought that, men, we should be the breadwinner, right? We should be making the more income and being able to regulate how finances move in the home. Now we're living in the 20th century, and I know that this is true for a lot of couples. Women today are breadwinners, right? They're bringing home the bacon, for sure. And in a lot of cases, they're making more money than their man counterpart, and I think that should be something that should be spoken, and I think once again it should be honored, and I think that men shouldn't take a fallback because of that, but we should lift our partners up because of that as well, and maybe every once in a while get a pair of Adidas, but what are your thoughts?
I'm thinking about expectations for marriage for women. Again, like some of us even think that all I need to be met by the husband, and not realizing that this is a two-part thing, right? This is a two-part relationship situation, and it's not always 50-50. It's not always you take half, I take half, or you take all and I just be taken care of. Sometimes it's 60-40. Some days it's 80-20, right? To give you a little background about LaWaun and I, we got married on 2/22/22. So we are 2 years into this. But we do know that this is something that God has called us to talk about marriage in a way that's relatable, and in a way that's, just really plain and real. Because I think that many of us have this idea of what marriage is, and it's all ideas. Some of it is fantasy, some of it is desire. But when you're in it, you really got to walk in it, and it's very different than what you envision and what you dream of. This is real life, and this is two people who have their own minds and have their own ways and their own routines and their own expectations of themselves that have to come together and make it work, and always make it work, right? And so it is sometimes stirring the pot, as my husband said in the last video, because when you stir the pot, guess what? Things move around and stuff comes up to the surface, right? And you gotta confront it. And you got to work through it. And so we have growing pains that we work through. We have situations and ways about ourselves that we have to compromise in. And so we walked into this knowing that God was in it and he was going to lead us, but God is also calling us to use wisdom and love and understanding with each other to walk through this as well.
Mm-hmm. Briefly, I just want to talk about, because what came to the surface for us early in our coupling, in our marriage, was how we argue, how we have a discussion, a heavy discussion, a passionate discussion. This is kind of tough for me to say, but my family taught me that being the loudest and saying the most wins arguments. And that is completely incorrect. And it's something that I had to really make sure that I didn't bring into my marriage. And it didn't get revealed until an impromptu moment, a very random situation, which really scared and brought to light to both of us that we need to do better if we are actually going to be an example of God's coupled work. And for me, I now realize that my expectation on what an argument looked like, right, and winning an argument was totally false. When you're married, when you're with someone, you don't want to put yourself in a win-lose situation. You want to put yourself in a win-win situation. And for me, that had to really help me taper down and want to have a discussion with you about the real meaning of why we're having a disagreement. One of the things that we try to practice, and we haven't really had to do it too many times, but a little tongue twister there. But it's laying on the floor when we're laying on our stomachs when we're in a heavy argument. I mean, it's hard to yell, right, when you're laying on your stomach.
Facing each other. Right?
Boom.
Trying to argue in that position. Not going to happen. Can I also add that we have, we work a lot on being in agreement in our marriage, because we know that how can two walk together unless they agree, right? And so we make agreements with each other about things. So we have agreed, and that helps us to be on the same page. And then we can remind each other when in the heat of the moment, we agreed to this. But we've made a decision and an agreement that we make time to talk about the heavy topics. I'm going to speak for me, right? I don't spring things on him in the spur of the moment when I know that it's a heavy topic and something that I know he may need time to process. I'm not going to tell him something maybe financially as he's walking out the door to go somewhere. That's not the time. I'm not going to do it first thing in the morning when he's getting up and moving around the house. That's not the time. But we're going to make time. So maybe like Saturday mornings when we don't have anything to do, we might lay in bed a little bit longer and talk. Hey, can we have that conversation now? Because we're both calm and we're relaxed and we can sit and process it without being emotional. Because you cannot make, and I encourage you to not make any decision when you are emotional, because that's not a stable place.
Don't make decisions when you're emotional.
It's up and down place, right? When you're emotional, you're all over the place. You are not stable. You are not grounded.
That's one thing I used to do too. I used to make more decisions in my heightened emotion.
Yes, and that you're not going to get a good result ever. And so take time to find a time. Maybe it's, when you're sitting on the couch watching a movie, or or you guys are taking a walk, right? Find that time when you can have those discussions, but I encourage you to not avoid those discussions.
We're really stirring the pot here.
But
this
okay.
is definitely a stirring the pot situation. And, so which means that there may be more information coming on the back end of this particular blog. The last piece here, which continues to add ingredients to this wonderful pot here, is that assumptions. Oh my. This is a completely different.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah,
this may transcend over talk. Okay, so should we have a home activity right now?
Do you have one?
Well, let's make up one. Okay, so for our home activity, we want you guys to think about what assumption that you have about marriage that was completely put to shame, right?
Completely wrong.
Completely wrong. So we want to talk about assumptions. And just real quickly, I want to say that, when we talk about coming into agreement, is that I used to have these assumptions, and I used to base my movements on those assumptions. And that's something that you definitely don't want to do. Any assumption that you have when you're working with someone that you love, you want to bring to the table. You want to be able to respectively bring it to fruition. Talk about it, confess it, breathe it. Because if you don't, then those assumptions can eat you up.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I like that.
All right, cool. So with that, hashtag curries are coming.
Yeah, we're coming for your marriage. We're coming for your parenting. We're coming for your relationships. And we're coming for your soul care.
Soul care.
Because we want to make sure and be sure that God is the center of it all. Take care of yourselves. Be good.
Peace.
Peace.